Hi everyone, welcome to the History Vault channel. The Russian Civil War, one of the bloodiest and most chaotic conflicts of the 20th century. It was a war that tore apart a nation, led to millions of deaths, and shaped the future of global politics. From 1917 to 1922, Russia was engulfed in a brutal struggle between the Red Army, led by the Bolsheviks, and the White Army, a loose coalition of anti-communist forces. But this wasn't just a war between two factions. It was a battle that involved over a dozen foreign nations, anarchists, nationalists, and millions of civilians caught in the crossfire. What led to this devastating war? What were the real costs in lives and destruction? And how did the world respond to one of the most brutal civil wars in history? To understand the Russian Civil War, we have to go back to 1917, a year of revolutions that changed Russia forever. At the start of the year, Russia was ruled by Tsar Nicholas II, an autocratic monarch leading a country already on the brink of collapse. World War I had drained Russia's resources, soldiers were dying by the millions, and food shortages had driven the people to the edge. In February 1917, massive protests broke out in Petrograd, leading to the abdication of the Tsar. A provisional government took control, promising democracy and reforms. But they made one crucial mistake: they kept Russia in the war. The war effort was failing. Russian soldiers were tired, starving, and deserting in massive numbers. Meanwhile, a radical group called the Bolsheviks, led by Vladimir Lenin, had been gaining support with their simple slogan: peace, land, and bread. In October 1917, Lenin and his followers staged a coup, overthrowing the provisional government in what became known as the October Revolution. The Bolsheviks seized power, pulled Russia out of World War I, and promised a socialist future. But not everyone was on board. Almost immediately, opposition forces began to form. Monarchists, liberals, and even moderate socialists were horrified by the Bolsheviks' radical policies. The Bolsheviks banned political opposition, executed their enemies, and started redistributing land. The Russian Civil War had begun. The two main sides were the Bolsheviks, Red Army, and the anti-Bolshevik White Army. But this was not a simple two-sided conflict. The war was fought on multiple fronts, with different factions controlling different parts of the country. The Red Army, led by Leon Trotsky, was well organized and disciplined. Trotsky turned a group of inexperienced revolutionaries into a formidable fighting force. The White Army, on the other hand, was divided and lacked a unified command. While they had experienced military officers, they struggled with coordination and a lack of popular support. But the Russian Civil War wasn't just a domestic conflict. Over a dozen foreign nations became involved, each with their own interests. The Allies, including Britain, France, the United States, and Japan, sent troops and supplies to support the White Army. Their goal was to stop the spread of communism and prevent the Bolsheviks from establishing a socialist government. Japan seized parts of Siberia, Britain and France landed troops in the north, and the US sent forces to Archangel and Vladivostok. Even Germany, despite being defeated in World War I, supported some anti-Bolshevik forces. At the same time, nationalist movements across the former Russian Empire used the chaos to declare independence. Ukraine, Finland, Poland, and the Baltic states all sought to break free. Some succeeded, while others were crushed by the Red Army. Anarchist forces, particularly in Ukraine under Nestor Makhno, fought both the Reds and the Whites, trying to establish a stateless society. Meanwhile, the Greens, peasant rebel groups, waged their own war against both armies, resisting forced conscription and food requisitioning. The war was brutal. The front lines shifted constantly, cities changed hands multiple times, and the violence spared no one. Both sides committed atrocities. The Red Army carried out mass executions of political enemies, including the execution of Tsar Nicholas II and his family in 1918. The Whites also carried out their own brutal reprisals, targeting Bolsheviks, Jews, and suspected communists. Pogroms against Jewish communities were widespread, resulting in tens of thousands of deaths. The war wasn't just fought with bullets. Starvation and disease killed millions. Entire villages were wiped out, and cities were left in ruins. The human cost was staggering. Estimates of total casualties vary, but most historians agree that between 7 and 12 million people died, including soldiers and civilians. Around 2 million people fled Russia, many of them intellectuals, artists, and former nobility. The war left Russia devastated. The economy collapsed, infrastructure was destroyed, and famine spread across the land. By 1920, the tide had turned decisively in favor of the Bolsheviks. The Red Army had defeated most of the White forces. By 1922, the last remnants of resistance had been crushed. The Soviet Union was officially established, and Lenin's vision of a communist state became a reality. But the cost was immense. The country was in ruins, and the scars of the Civil War would last for decades. The war also shaped the world's future. The Soviet Union emerged as a major global power, spreading communist ideology across the world. The victory of the Bolsheviks also deepened tensions with Western nations, laying the groundwork for future conflicts like the Cold War. The Russian Civil War was more than just a battle for control, it was a turning point in history. It changed the course of Russia and the world, leaving behind a legacy of revolution, repression, and transformation. The echoes of this war still resonate today, shaping politics, ideology, and the way we understand power. Music fades out. A final message appears on the screen: history is written in blood. The past shapes the future. Remember it. That's it for today's video. If you found this story fascinating, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more deep dives into history. What do you think was the most important consequence of the Russian Civil War? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.